Okay, I want to talk about the red card in that game in Turin earlier today between Italy and South Africa. It was given to Franco Mostert, a straight red card for an illegal tackle that had head contact. Now, when I mentioned it in the game review earlier, I can't even remember what I said, but all I know is that it's really hard to think, let alone process your thoughts and put them in a kind of logical process fashion when there's 80,000 people around you, there is music booming, and there's a rugby match about to kick off just over there. So it's half time in the Wales-Japan game right now, so I thought I'd nip out and just have a few thoughts. And my motivation with this one is to try and just get World Rugby to give their head a wobble. I mean, that's acting like anything I say is going to make a difference to World Rugby, but you never know. One grain of sand on top of another, eventually it becomes a mountain. So I'm just going to chuck a little grain of sand on top and just say, please, World Rugby, give your head a wobble. Sort it out before we get to a really, really important big game. Say a Rugby World Cup knockout match where there is no tomorrow, and when this could be the pinnacle of a player's career and it gets ruined for a mad decision based on, I don't know. Well, I trace this back. I trace this decision against Franco Mostert this time, but it's been against other players in other games. And if they don't change it, it will be against other players in future games. I trace this back to pure hysteria surrounding head contact in rugby that goes back maybe 5, 6, 7 years. And look, that's not to minimise the danger of head contact in rugby. I love the fact that rugby is safer than it's ever been. There is more medical understanding, medical care, and provisions made to protect players. But there is also no getting around the fact, and nor should we try and apologise for the fact or get around the fact, rugby's a dangerous sport, and the danger is part of the reason why I love it. And I bet it's the same for you as well. In fact, I bet it's the case for most people. There's a phrase that a friend of mine uses that I love: the risk is the reward. It's why we watch, it's why we play, it's why rugby always gets my respect. Anyone at whatever level, and I've said this before, but I mean it 100%, anyone at any level that steps across the whitewash onto a rugby pitch gets my respect, because it's a dangerous sport and you have to be brave to do it. And the fact is that in a dangerous sport where bodies are moving at pace, dynamically, with force, accidents are going to happen. And my assessment of Franco Mostert's tackle today was he was doing everything right and it was an accident. And accidents happen. So my assessment earlier was I would have been happy with the referee saying play on, but somehow we're here in a situation where the referee gave a straight red card. So I think that's worthy of a little bit more examination now that the music is not booming in my ears, there's not 80,000 people around me, and I can process my thoughts. I'd be interested to know yours. And also, I quite like doing this separate from the rugby, because I don't like, where I can, I try not to talk about officiating decisions when there's games of rugby to talk about, because that's the stuff we love, isn't it? That's the stuff we want to see. That's the stuff we want to celebrate, and that's where World Rugby need to understand, get out of the way of all of the great stuff happening out on the park. Because 7, 8, however many years ago it is, people started getting a little bit nuts about head contact. Rugby's never been safer, and that's a good thing. And look, I'm not trying to say we should just not care about head contact, we should, but come on, you know it when you see it, and that was not it. Franco Mostert did everything right, and that's one thing as well. I've already talked about in a knockout match in the World Cup, a team's whole 4-year work could be just into smoke because of a decision like that. Franco Mostert may never play for South Africa again. Actually, I'm going to make a prediction. I think that red card will get rescinded. And I'll come on to why in a second. I don't think it will stand. I think it will get overturned and he'll be available next week. But in such a competitive position, South Africa is stacked with locks, and Franco Mostert he's won 2 World Cups already. He wants to be part of a group that goes for the 3-peat. And if that was going to be the way it ended for him, if that gave someone else an opportunity and they took it, there would be regret for the rest of his life, and it just wouldn't be fair or right. So I think it's going to be rescinded, but we will see. So, to go through the process, I've had a look back at it, and I thought it's interesting to go through what referee James Dolman says about this decision. He said the TMO confirmed there was clear head contact. That's point 1. I would contest point number 1. The TMO has confirmed there was clear head contact. It's interesting that he said the TMO has confirmed, because it was on the big screen. Did James Dolman not see it? And if the referee didn't, should he not have seen it? I'm not a massive fan of the bunker generally. I'm not a massive fan of abdicating the responsibility to a TMO. But if you've introduced this bunker and this TMO, was this not the prime moment to have the 10 minutes to take a little bit of time and look at the replays again, just to make 100% sure? Because when I look at it, and the more I look at it, the less of a red card it looks. My initial reaction was, he's done everything right there and he's gone really low. What's the problem? I can maybe head contact, but equally you could argue there's no head contact. In fact, when I first saw it, and the more I see it, the more it looks like Paolo Garbisi gets hit high, but shoulder to shoulder, and his head moves forward like whiplash fashion onto the back of Franco Mostert's shoulder. So I think there's an argument, and this is the reason I think it will be overturned, because I don't think the TMO can say there has been clear head contact. I don't think it is clear. But anyway, that's point number one. Point number two, and this was James Dolman on the field, he says, now we know it was head contact. It was always illegal, therefore no mitigation can be applied. And this is where World Rugby have tied themselves in knots. In trying, and this is also where fans, we're responsible a little bit I'm talking about fans generally, when we always say we just want consistency. I may have said this on the video earlier, but when we talk about just wanting consistency, this is kind of where you get. I think you have to accept referees are there to interpret the law as they see it. And that means there will be differences from game to game, referee to referee. As long as it's consistent across the 80 minutes and broadly speaking, broadly consistent generally, then that's good enough for me. But when you try and do it by tick box and form and flow chart, this is where you get phrases like always illegal. And I've seen loads of other fans and pundits and people parroting this phrase like, no, definite red card because he's always illegal. Anyone that's played the game of rugby looks at that tackle from Franco Mostert, and I think, well, the vast majority of people, I would say, who've played rugby, look at that tackle of Franco Mostert's and they say, he's done everything he could. What more do you want from a player to avoid head contact than getting as low as Franco Mostert got? He was practically at 90 degrees. Same with Lou Diaga last week. Could not have hinged more at the waist. And I would also, I've said it before, and I'll credit South Africa for this. They have been world leaders at changing behaviour. That phrase that World Rugby said they wanted. Nobody reacted better to the law changes than South Africa, who at the Rugby World Cup 2023 were the lowest, that they hit lowest most. And I've mentioned it in videos before. It always amazes me how they have so many big men who managed to get so low so consistently. And part of it was Jacques Nienaber, with his physiotherapy background, worked on the flexibility of his players so they could get into legal body positions to make dominant hits. And you have to credit them and say fair play, they have been world leaders. And as a result, I look at Lou Diaga last week, I look at Franco Mostert this week and think, they're doing what you wanted them to do, World Rugby, and yet you're still dishing out red cards for things like this. And on this occasion, it's because it was, well, same as last week, it was always illegal, so mitigation cannot be applied. Anyone that has played rugby can look at that situation and say, oh, I totally understand how Franco Mostert's right arm has stayed kind of back a little bit. It's because he had a teammate right next to him. This phrase, another phrase that boils my piss, is leading with the shoulder. Oh, he led with the shoulder, so red card. What other part of the body is a player meant to lead with? That's what happens with every single tackle. And again, anyone that's played the game of rugby understands this. People that use the phrase, oh, he led with the shoulder, I honestly think they're not active rugby players. I may be wrong. Who knows? Tell me if I'm wrong in the comments. It's fine. But every tackle, you initiate contact with the shoulder and then the arm wraps. The only reason Franco Mostert's arm didn't wrap is because he had a teammate, I think it was Ethan Hooker, right there. So anyone with any empathy or the ability, if World Rugby gave the referees the ability to show empathy for the players, then I just don't think that gets given a red card. I don't think, as I said earlier, Nigel Owens does not give that as a red card, because he was refereeing during a time where they didn't have this rigid flow chart, which just gets things wrong. The great comparison is the Lorenzo Canoni yellow. He hits Marco van Staden high. He does have some kind of wrap with his arms, and therefore mitigation is allowed to be applied. But I agree with the Canoni yellow. I totally agree with the Canoni yellow. I thought that was a fair call. I also think that should be the worst that Franco Mostert got, but I wouldn't have minded if it was nothing, to be honest. And it all comes down to the fact that he couldn't move his arm around because he had a teammate on his right. And I just think anyone that has any empathy for the players and what they're trying to do, and any appreciation of how fast, dynamic, and physically agile you have to be to play rugby, how decisions are made in milliseconds, and how these guys that go out onto the field are warriors that deserve our absolute respect, just take a step back. Hopefully, you know, it didn't cost South Africa the result, and that's good. Hopefully, and it's given them more practice at playing with 14. I mean, you could argue that Rassie Erasmus should just pick 14 players in his team. I mean, that would be the ultimate flex, wouldn't it? Is there a law that says you have to pick 15 players to start? That would be hilarious. How funny would that be? The Welsh game, that's what South Africa should do. Just pick a starting 14 and maybe, or even pick a 15 but have 14 starting the match, have 8 on the bench. Oh my God, I've just thought that's the ultimate Rassie flex. Rassie Erasmus, do that. Start the match with 14 players against Wales and have 9 players on the bench. Or 8, 9, I can't think. It's been a long day. You know what I'm saying. That would be the ultimate flex. So yeah, I feel for Franco Mostert. I feel for Ben Jason Dixon. That's really harsh on him. Sia Khaleesi last week on his 100th test. Really harsh on him. It just so happens to be South Africa 2 weeks in a row, same position, same type of tackle. But one of these days, it's going to affect a team significantly in a match where there is no tomorrow. And that is the one thing rugby needs to avoid. And we need to just make the focus all of the amazing stuff that is happening out there on the park with these players that are superhuman. And I've put on a proper show today. So there you go, there's a few thoughts on that tackle. And like I say, without the music blaring in my ears, without 80,000 people all around me, and without a rugby match I'm about to start, I think I've made a little bit more sense. And also made a plea that I want to make to World Rugby with a bit more clarity. And kept this refereeing stuff away from all the good rugby stuff. So there you go, let me know what you think. I will see you on the next video. I'll be down there in the comments with you. I better get back for the second half of Wales-Japan.